Meditation on the A30. A man on his own in a car is revenging himself on his wife. He opens the throttle and bubbles with dottle and puffs at his pitiful life. She's losing her looks very fast. She loses her temper all day. That lorry won't let me get past. This Mini is blocking my way. Why can't you step on it and shift her? I can't go on crawling like this. At breakfast she said that she wished I was dead. Thank heavens we don't have to kiss. I'd like a nice blonde on my knee, and one who won't argue or nag. Who dares to come hooting at me? I only give way to a jag. You're balmy or plastered, I'll past you, you bastard. I will overtake you, I will. As he clenches his pipe, his moment is ripe, and the corner's accepting its kill. So a bit of a change, and I think I should address the elephant in the room. This is not Philip Larkin. This is in fact John Betjeman, contemporary of Larkin's, and actually another of my favourite poets. Although I must say that the step change from what I was doing before to what I'm doing now needs to be explained. So while doing the Joe Riley Presents series for the Philip Larkin Society, I felt like I had, for the first time in a while in podcasting, I actually felt like I had a really dedicated listenership who have emailed me and left me some lovely comments. But one thing that has sort of been said quite a few times is, can you please branch out? Can you try talk about other poets? And it made me wonder, could I? Do I have the depth of knowledge? Probably not. Certainly not to go into any academic level of absolute expertise on everything. But I figured if I looked at this as a series of sketches, sketch poetry, where I might not have all the answers right away, I'll always be as informed as I think I need to be to sound like I know what I'm talking about. But to try and capture the essence of a poem in a place that feels like it befits it. So with today's poem, Meditation on the A30, it seemed to just jump out at me. I've got this wonderful book called Poetry by Heart, 101 Poems to Remember, edited with an introduction by Ted Hughes, who knew a thing or two. And the whole point of this collection is that these are poems that are supposed to be memorable and read out loud. And there's some absolute corkers, including, of course, this one right here. So, why the A30? Why does that matter to me? Well, actually, I live pretty much just off the A30. I'm a resident of Hook, which is a very small village in northeast Hampshire. I've only lived here for a few years. I'm originally a Winchester boy by heart, but I've lived here now for long enough that it feels like home, and I'm very, very lucky that I can live in such a nice spot. It's got everything that you would want, and I do find that, you know, certainly today, it's middle of September, school is back in. I'm absolutely knackered, but I've been fortunate enough to finish a little bit early this Friday, and I've taken the bike out while my daughter's still at nursery and my wife is still at work, and just getting a little bit of me time. But the A30 goes right through the middle of Hook. Over here it's just referred to simply as the London Road, and it goes all the way from out near Hounslow down all the way pretty much to Land's End. I decided that whichever stretch of the A30 this poem is set on doesn't matter too much. I did originally have this plan to cycle along with my Tascam recorder sort of plugged into a headset, and I was going to read the poem while I cycled along the A30. After about a minute of being on the A30, I felt like I needed to get off it as quick as possible. My God, I've never had so many people nearly kill me in such a short space of time. And I'm not a preachy cyclist. I don't believe that, you know, cyclists should have any special right of way or anything like that. I ride a bike, I accept that that is a dangerous thing to do, especially when you've got so many wallies on the road. But Jesus Christ, it's very unnerving, and it did feel like most of the drivers of those cars seemed to be men on their own. And I think when I read this poem ages ago, and I've sort of come back to it, I've come back to Betjeman over the past few years, I've really found myself just loving the way that he characterises and satirises some members of the public, and they're very much recognisable now. So let's talk about the poem itself. Let's figure out some of the stuff that's going on. I had to look up what dottle was, and for those not in the know, it is the remnants of your pipe after you've been smoking it, which would make sense actually when you think about the puffing at his pitiful life. And we have just quite a lot in here to really unpack. So the rhyme scheme is quite, it's car, wife, dottle life, fast day, past way. It's quite simplistic. We've got these quatrains, lines of 4 going through, and it's funny. It's very amusing. It does have a sort of real sense of parody pastiche. I'm getting a bit of a Nicholas Nasty, Stephen Stelfox sort of vibe from the man in the car. He is at once both horribly masculine and horribly sort of toxic and sort of chauvinistic in his language, but he's also pitiful at the same time. Especially when we get to his reported speech, she's losing her looks very fast. She loses her temper all day. That lorry won't let me get past. This Mini is blocking my way. I think the Mini line is inspired actually. Nowadays, of course, Minis are massive, sort of BMWs essentially. A Countryman Mini is as big as any other car on the road. Cars are bigger now, generally so much bigger. And just to sort of digress slightly, I remember being a few years ago very much not on the A30, but my wife and I took a trip to the States, and we drove down the West Coast. We drove from Seattle down to San Francisco, and at the time we'd hired a Jeep Cherokee, which was the biggest car I'd ever driven in my life. It felt like a tank, and yet when I got out onto the interstate, it felt pretty minnow-sized, to be honest with you. Take away all the sort of lorries and trucks, just everybody's car just seemed bigger. And I've noticed that over the years, every time I've seen newer cars come out, they seem that little bit beefier, a little bit bigger, a little bit wider. And there is an argument that you've got a lot of people that don't really know how to drive them either, but maybe that's by the by. The idea that he can't get past a Mini is quite symbolic, I would imagine. Maybe there's a sense of him, compensating for something with his rage. Who knows? And to make a bit of a link with Larkin, given that they were contemporaries, there is a vague hint of the self's the man here a little bit. Somebody who feels resentful of his life. He married a woman to stop her getting away. Now she's there all day. And this idea of I can't go on crawling like this. At breakfast she said she wished I was dead. Thank heavens we don't have to kiss. So the idea of I can't go on crawling like this metaphor of, crawling along the highway of life. And I've been there, especially maybe not on the A30, but definitely various A roads and motorways in the morning, the commute, going to a job I don't really want to do, so I can make money, to have a life that, frankly, I probably can't actually afford to have. And you can get, if you're in a car every day. I wouldn't consider myself to have road rage. I don't think that's my style, but it can be pretty easy to get wound up by people. I'm sure that I pissed a few people off earlier on being on my bike, and that is an age-old sort of issue, is when you have slower moving things on the road. I mean, I really do feel for horse riders. There's a lot of people on the road now in high-speed motor vehicles who, frankly, don't deserve the privilege of that, because they drive like lunatics. But again, this is not a preachy thing about road users. It's more a meditation, as it were, on drivers and what roads symbolise. In terms of where I am right now, I did actually take a turn off the A30. I thought about sitting right next to it as cars whizzed past and doing this poem and doing this little podcast, but after a while it was starting to hurt my own ears, and I thought if it's hurting my ears, it's definitely going to hurt yours. So I've turned off and cycled back up towards Newnham, where I did the church-going episode for Philip Larkin. I will confess that on this nice sunny September afternoon, very bucolic and pretty, sat by a pond, I had hoped that the pub would be open, but sadly they don't open until 5:30, so bit of a schoolboy error there. Never mind, I'll make do with my Lucozade. Why the A30 though? One thing I didn't realise until I looked it up, but actually the route used to be an old post road back in 1512, so as early as that, and apparently the route between the Royal Court and Exeter was done for the speedy conveyance of all such packets as shall be sent from the Earl of Bedford out of the West Country. So the route originally followed City of London Post Room through Hertford Bridge, Basingstoke, down through Salisbury, Sherborne, Crewker and Honiton, Exeter, Crediton. And so all of these roads are sort of, they're on or are bypassed now by the modern A30, with the exception of Andover, and that passes down through Stockbridge and Sutton Scotney. But the road also appeared on the John Ogilby's 1675 map of Britain, the road from London to the Land's End in Cornwall. So this route, despite just being a road that goes through, my village where I live, this road has some serious heritage and history to it. I wonder if that had any bearing at all on why Betjeman chose that as the title. Of course, for younger listeners as well, people even younger than me, would potentially not quite understand the significance of A-roads. There was a period of time before motorways. Certainly, my dad used to love taking the A-roads bloody everywhere. He would avoid the motorway like the plague, which is why it always took us about 6 hours to get anywhere, including travelling up to see my family up in Preston. Although nowadays, if you take the A road, sometimes it's quicker than going on the motorway. So maybe my dad was onto something there. Miss you, Dad. Although I don't miss your detours. The idea of it being a time of frustration, and it says meditation. I think that's quite a nice tongue-in-cheek, taking the mickey sort of approach, because sitting in your car is one of the times you get to think about things, especially in traffic, or especially in an annoying situation where you feel like you want to be going from here to there, but there's something in the way. Hello metaphor, hello life. You think you got it all planned out, and then there's a bloody bottleneck at the place you just want to get off. And the idea of the dream that he has, this, of what he really wants. I'd like a nice blonde on my knee, and one who won't argue or nag. And he's interrupted out of this mildly pornographic reverie with, who dares to come hooting at me? I only give way to a jag. And I don't know if this is a bit of a class sort of joke here, this idea of he doesn't mind giving way to somebody who's got a nicer car than him, but actually, he's not happy. If someone honks the horn at him, it's considered, how dare you? Again, thinking about driving back in this time, the idea of it was quite rare to have a car, for quite a long time in the UK and indeed anywhere. Everybody owning their car, or my wife and I have a car each because we need it for work. I need to be able to go to work, she needs to be able to go to work, and it's crazy. I remember growing up actually being a one-car household at a point, And then all of a sudden it seemed to be that, we were the family that had 2 cars. They were always bangers, they were always old ones, which is why my dad must have spent a lot of money down the local garage trying to make sure the cars stayed ticking over. And I know bugger all about cars, and I've gone the other way. We both my wife and I have been loyal lease owners of PCP sort of car plans for nearly 10 years now. Cars for me are just a way to get from A to B. I don't really care as long as they work and as long as they're safe. But the idea of somebody taking such pride in their car, it's a very macho male thing, and something I've never really been able to get on board with. Maybe parts of this poem kind of passed me by, if you pardon the pun. And then, of course, the idea of dominance on the road to finish. You bar me or plastered, I'll pass you, you bastard. I will overtake you, I will. That sense of absolute just willpower. I will not do what you want me to do it. I'm going. And I swear this is how 9 out of 10 sort of fatalities happen on the road. It's somebody full of testosterone, full of frustration, saying, yeah, you know what, I'm going to get one over on you, I'm going to go round you. I mean, I'm sighing out of kind of depression for the human race, when you've got people who think like that, and I'm afraid it is often blokes. You just have to ask yourself, well, what are you expecting? You're driving a hunk of metal even faster than you should be in a residential area sometimes, or on the wrong side of the road just to get round somebody. Couldn't you wait? Couldn't you wait for 10 minutes? And the answer is often it's not about the material time that has been wasted, it's about a perception of time. And we all get annoyed when we feel delayed to our destinations, but I think this poem takes on something far bigger. The idea that this person, whoever they are, has found themselves driving a car that they don't really like, possibly on his way to or on his way from seeing his wife, who he doesn't really love anymore and doesn't love him. God, it's depressing, but it's also, like all Betjeman's sort of approach to things, the satire and the distance that he keeps from the subject allows us to really, really visualise this man. That final couple of lines is I'm still not quite certain. As he clenches his pipe, his moment is ripe, and the corner's accepting its kill. I sort of wonder if this is you can almost feel the tension. You can see the man's jaw clenching, you can see the pipe sort of sticking out the side of his mouth furiously, like some sort of mad Mr. Toad. But the idea of his moment is ripe and the corner's accepting its kill. The corner being personified here is almost like a grateful god being sated, knowing that here comes yet another bloody idiot who's going to dash themselves on a tough corner, not knowing quite how to navigate it at speed. Yeah, it's dark. I love it. I'm still not entirely certain what format these podcasts need to take. I like the idea of them being short and sweet and having at their heart me sort of surmising, and if you like the way my delivery is, if you enjoy my approach to things, then please stick around. If you find me infuriating, please tune out, go do something else with your life. You're not missing much. But if you are interested in hearing more of these, this is very much a two-way street. I am always interested in hearing new poems, or poems that I maybe haven't read for a long time. I consider myself pretty well versed, but you don't always know. Sometimes a poem creeps up on you. I probably came back to Betjeman in part, this is really embarrassing to say, via Rick Stein, whose programs I absolutely love. And he's a huge, huge fan of Betjeman. He talks about him a lot, obviously, and mentions frequently that he lives in Padstow. That's not true, Rick, and I hope he listens to this. Rick Stein doesn't live in Padstow. He is Padstow. He owns Padstow. they should just call it Steintown and just be done with it, I think. But a little bit like Rick, John Betjeman struck me as a man that lived life to the absolute fullest and enjoyed every moment of it, as in the way that only a completely, depressive individual could. Betjeman's poetry is laced with this dark, coarse sort of humour. Unlike Larkin, I think Betjeman manages to make you actually believe that he's cheerful at times, which in a way makes his darker poems even darker. So, whatever you thought of this episode, and if you enjoy other poems and you'd love to sort of hear them, please get in touch. I will put something in the show notes. You can contact me via that. And please like, share, subscribe. Get this out there. Tell all you people who like poetry to go and listen to sketch poetry wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you, and please drive safely.